Hey guys, what's up? We're back with another video, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my top three car scene hot takes. This can range from like a past event that happened, some weird opinions that I have myself that may not seem normal within the car community, or it could just be, I don't know, some weird shit that I'm not comfortable with. So without further ado, let's begin. So this first one, I know definitely for sure it's going to trigger a lot of people, and I'm just going to say it. Four-wheel drive ain't all that, and it's not going to solve all your problems. For some strange reason, even some really, top tier journalists talk about this. I feel like they have just sort of lost that understanding of like vehicle dynamics because I'm going to keep it 100. I'm not saying this because I have a two-wheel drive vehicle. I've driven all kinds of vehicles, and there are some vehicles that it does, they do have a lot of character and it just happens to be four-wheel drive. But I think it's just more so the people who don't understand vehicle dynamics. Four-wheel drive is not going to solve all your problems. Like, let's just talk about, four-wheel drive into day-to-day life. Like, a lot of people think that their SUV is four-wheel drive when I find out it's front-wheel drive, and they think, oh, they're going to be so invincible in the winter time. They're not going to get stuck in snow and stuff like that. And then when the winter time comes, they have a hard time getting up hills. They can barely get any traction, and they're left scratching their heads thinking, I thought all SUVs were four-wheel drive. Well, that's not always the case, but to go more into depth about it, I think it's not so much more the vehicle, it's just the people behind it and how it's marketed as. Not every single four-wheel drive system on the market is equal. Like for me, if you want my personal opinion, if you want to get the best and most capable four-wheel drive system, it's definitely going to be a Subaru or a car that you actually have the ability to control your differential, putting it in four high or four low. And I'm sort of the guy, if it doesn't have that, it's not true four-wheel drive. Now, this isn't saying like, oh, the STIs and Evos. And I think even the STI has a center differential control. Like you can control where the power is sent, and you can do that on the fly. And I think Subaru has done that for a very long time. And I've seen very few car manufacturers come out with that, and it just seems really, really, I just wish car makers did that more. Like, a lot of cars from factory that are four-wheel drive have some of the worst understeer tendencies. And I'm not saying this because, I have a Civic Si and it's really good in the corners for a front-wheel drive car. And I'm saying this from a perspective that the technology was always there, and I don't know why other even more expensive vehicles just never bothered to include it. But this is just more so, I don't like four-wheel drive. It's just more so the people behind it. Like they have this whole complex that four-wheel drive is a superior drivetrain. But I think it kind of all comes down to, what do you really want to use your car? What is its purpose? Like if you're just a normal everyday person, I do recommend you have four-wheel drive if you live out on the countryside and you're always coming in and out of the city, because when you live in those those countryside roads, I can't even speak. When you live in the countryside, they're not going to be as plowed as city roads. City roads are always plowed in a timely manner, and in the countryside, they will plow it in a timely manner, but not as what's that word? Not as, I can't even think today. Not as wow, I can't. My brain is not working today. It's not as frequent as, yeah, there we go. It's not as frequent as it is in the city. So it's just more so that people just have this complex against it. I just really think four wheel drive isn't all that. There are some four wheel drive vehicles that I do enjoy quite a bit, but to say that it's the best thing since sliced bread, no. It pretty much all depends on what you're using your vehicle for. Like if you're a guy who's a car enthusiast, you're obsessed with horsepower, I think you're probably going to need it. You're going to need it on the street, and you're probably going to need it on the drag strip, because you want to get the most traction you can from a dig. And I would say the best drivetrain, I don't know, for me, but I think the best one is probably the midship rear wheel drive layout. That one just gives me like a go kart feeling. I feel like I can just like point the car anywhere, and surprisingly, they're pretty decent at launches, and some of them can even come close or even compare to some four-wheel drive vehicles. And a lot of people don't see that. I'll take an extreme example of the new Corvette 01 Z01. Oh my God. The new Corvette 01 that was revealed, I think, a couple months ago or something like that. Um, that car is midship rear wheel drive, and it doesn't have four wheel drive at all. And the way it launches and the way it launches itself, it's just insane because we have that thinking at four wheel drive is the only way you can be successful at a dig. But just seeing a two wheel drive car doing it and keeping it with a four wheel drive car is just bonkers. And I knew this from a very long time ago, like the MR2s, NSXs, Lotus Elises. They actually had very, very good, like getting off the line. They were pretty good and they had good traction because the engine is in the back. There's more weight over the wheels, so you have a little bit more downforce and grip in the back just from the car's natural weight from the engine. I don't know if what I said makes sense, but that's to my understanding. But yeah, four-wheel drive ain't all that, but I do respect it. Number two, every single time that I go to a car meet, there's always this one person. I shouldn't say one person. There's always a few people that have the same generic, boring opinions. Like some of the best conversations that I've had in the car community is with people who were like totally different from me. Like for me, I like sport compact cars, I like track, I like motorsport, I like rally. And then there's other people who are in the space, they're more into off-roading, they're more into, off-roading, pickup trucks and stuff like that. And I've actually had some pretty interesting conversations with them compared to, let's say, like people in my own same area. But to expand on this further, it's, there's just a common thing. I would go and say like, oh, older cars are always better. It just seems like I get it. Like, modern cars, they're quite heavy. They lack in any kind of feel because of all the safety equipment, all the electronics. I mean, nowadays we're kind of we're favoring electronic LSDs over mechanical ones, which kind of blows my mind. And like even driving my own car, which does have a mechanical limited slip diff, and one that doesn't, you can feel the difference. Now they've come a very long way, but it doesn't come close to a mechanical because a mechanical is instantaneous. Like even though electronics are extremely fast, like we're talking milliseconds fast, if you've driven a car with a mechanical limited slip diff, and then you go to one with an electronic one, you can feel the difference right away. Like there's like a slight delay, and then it kind of feels like an LSD. If that makes sense. But yeah, that's how it's always felt. But it's slowly improving. It's slowly improving, but I still don't think it could touch a mechanical limited slip diff. But going back to my original point, it just every single car like enthusiast has the same perspective. Like older cars are just better, newer cars suck. It's just like I'm kind of the guy. I'm like I can't really say a car sucks. Like I can say, oh, this car, like I don't like the looks of it, but like to be honest, I've never really driven the car. One of the cars my friends talk about, like just to sort of get me going, is the Hyundai Elantra, and like I was never a Hyundai fan. I always thought they were like super duper cheap. They were chintzy. They were garbage compared to their Japanese counterparts. But I've been watching Hyundai over the years, and they're pretty much watching the Japanese makers really closely and seeing what they're doing, like these markups, charging way more for what the vehicle is worth. Even though like some of these are appreciating assets, it's just ridiculous with the prices, and Hyundai is sort of capitalizing that. I heard they're not as bad as Honda and Toyota, but if it were me, like if I was in like a super duper perfect financial situation, I would have a lot of choice, and one of the choices might be just buying a new Hyundai Elantra with the 6-speed manual out the door. Even though I'm not a fan of Hyundai, I'm actually down for new experiences. That's kind of like my character. I love experiencing new things to see like if I like it or not. And yeah, because back in the day, Hyundai was a complete joke, and now they kind of seem to be catching up. But I still think they have a little ways to go in their quality department, but they are catching up really fast and capitalizing on the market. Um, yeah, that's just like it kind of took me by shock because I was like, Hyundai, when you hear Hyundai, you don't really think of enthusiast vehicles or anything like that. You think of just, a boring old commuter car that has tech, that has the latest technology. That's sort of where they get you. And you're just going to be okay with that. And, it's a little bit slower than Japanese cars. And yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, going back to the original point, because I'm kind of getting carried away here. Yeah, I just wish there was just more differing opinions. But this is why I don't really like a lot of people. If you hang out with me long enough, you kind of realize I don't, when it comes to like the car scene, going out to car meets, like I have my friends and stuff that stick with me, but when it comes to like the different kinds of cars, I always like to change it up a little bit. Like I can't stay in the same realm because that's just me. That's who I am. I have to have a different experience. And that's why, like, a pet peeve of mine in car culture is that everyone has the same opinions. And it's kind of getting boring, man. Like, there needs to be some more flavor up in here. And lastly, the third one, drag racing rules everything. Now, this actually stems from, I don't like to say it out loud, but I will in this case, from my own best friend. I love my best friend, and I actually like that we're differing in this way. It actually makes the conversations way more interesting. He's really into drag racing, but the only thing that I can't get my finger on when it comes to drag racing is it's just this chase of this endless chase of horsepower. Like I'm not talking about like your 700, 800 horsepower. I'm talking about like your 1900 horsepower Dodge Vipers, 2100, like some ridiculous number like that, GTRs. And it's crazy. It is crazy. They put a lot of money into these vehicles, and it just seems like you're always chasing something. Like, you can never be like content with what you have. I'm pretty sure they are content with what they have, but from seeing it from an outside perspective, it's just like they just keep chasing it, and it never seems to end. Like they'll never be happy. Like, dude, if I had a car that was like 750 horsepower, like if I built the car, I built the motor, I tuned it, turbo, whatever, I would enjoy the fuck out of that car. And you know that's pretty much it. But going back to the point, there's this thing where if you don't make a certain amount of horsepower, then your car isn't as interesting as what it really is. Like, for instance, like if you have a Honda Civic, or let's not use the Honda Civic. I've been using that way too much in the video. But if you have a Supra, if your Supra is not making 1,000 horsepower, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it on the internet. And I just find that so bizarre. Like, the drag community. I know it's really weird saying the drag community. I shouldn't even call it that, but it just seems really weird that it's so toxic. It's like there's a set of rules, and if you don't follow these set of rules, you can't really be included in the community. And it's really hard. It's one of the hardest spaces in the car community to get into, but a lot of their way of things sort of trickles down into like people who are just starting out, and it's like the worst thing to like get into. But I shouldn't even say it's the worst thing to get into. It's pretty exciting. A lot of people get into it for the thrill, but it's probably one of the most toxic parts in the car community that I've ever experienced, and I have experienced a lot. I've experienced sport compacts. I've experienced drag, track, pretty much the whole 9 yards, and by far that one has to be the most toxic, just by a far margin. Like, everyone else kind of understands like how vehicles are, their dynamics and stuff like that, but when it comes to drag, it's crazy. Like, I've even seen some podcasts online. Yeah, I can't help just but cringe. Like, these guys, like, unless you're chasing it for money, I just don't really see it being a point. Like, I love watching it, but being in it is a complete different thing. So yeah, those are sort of my top three car scene hot takes. So if you think I'm wrong, if you guys think I'm a dumbass, leave a comment. All right, guys. Peace out.